So here we have Derek, a Asian American student in UIUC. Derek, please briefly introduce yourself.
So my name is Derek. Uh, I'm a freshman this year. I'm an Asian American, so I was born in the U.S. I spent about 7 years in Taiwan, which is where my parents are from. So technically, so I'm 18 right now. So roughly about half of my time was spent in Taiwan, and half of my time was spent here. Yes, my primary language is English. I also speak Mandarin and Taiwanese. I can speak all three languages I can speak Mandarin and English pretty well. I can understand Taiwanese pretty well too. Not really good at speaking it, but yeah, those are my three main languages.
Great, great to know about you and some basic information. So first of all, which generation of immigrant do you consider yourself?
I guess I'm a first generation. So my parents moved here, or my parents came here to study, and that's how they met. They met here. So technically, I'm the first generation born here. My parents are American citizens, but they were born in Taiwan.
Okay. So given what you said, you pretty much consider yourself have a well English ability. But have you at any point encountered a language barrier?
So yes, twice actually. So when I moved back to Taiwan, my language skills weren't that good because obviously I spent my first few years here. So going back there, I struggled pretty badly. It's not like I could understand what they were speaking or what they were saying, but I myself couldn't speak the language that well. And so I went there when I went back, I was enrolled in regular public school, even though they have like dual languages school, like bilingual schools or whatever you call them. So I also had to learn to write and speak Chinese or Mandarin, so that was pretty hard. Coming back was a bit easier, but obviously I was gone for 7 years, moving back to Taiwan, so it was like I guess a 1 year adjustment period where I had to like pick up like some like certain slangs and stuff. But other than that, those were my two major experiences.
Oh, pretty interesting. So you have encountered language barrier in Chinese and in English.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
All right. So that's very interesting background about your family. So your parents are their first languages are Chinese, right?
Yeah.
So, are your parents fluent in English?
If they speak, you can tell that I think English isn't their primary language. But other than that, they can communicate well, or like I think actually they can communicate, like they can completely understand what you're saying, and they basically communicate like regular people, except they have an accent.
Oh, so are they able to support you in any homework or any educational support?
So yeah, right now, obviously I do all the studying and stuff. But when I was a kid, I do remember that my parents, they know their English wasn't that good, but they always try to sort of give me a step up. So I remember them buying a lot of their regular books, reading books, and I think probably you could fill it in that fridge over there. That's how much books they bought, and for them, it was pretty important for me to like sort of. They wanted me to adapt well to the American environment or the environment, so in the U.S. So even though they couldn't speak it that well, they always tried to find ways of improving my English. So reading books was one of them.
Oh, great! So they give you lots of books to read, and that helps you in study. Okay, that's very interesting. And you read a whole fridge of books, as you said?
Yeah, they did. They also brought it back to Taiwan too. So that's one of the reasons why when I came back, I adapted or I sort of like adjusted pretty well because they had a lot of books.
Oh, so that helped. Reading helped.
Yeah.
Okay. So, how did their English ability affect your educational experience in any bit? Do you ever feel like they were incapable of supporting you in education? Were they able to give you advice in education, or do you feel like a little shameful when they come to school and pick you up or anything?
for me, or for my parents, education was pretty important for me. They were, I wouldn't say ashamed of like their like inability to speak English that well, but I mean they were kind of like sometimes when they spoke to teachers and stuff, it was clear that they were sometimes nervous, which is pretty funny. But they've always put an emphasis on my education, so they've always tried to, like reading books was one example. They always give me a lot of support and stuff. Yeah, so they're like the language wasn't a problem for my education, basically.
Oh, that's nice. So now we're moving on to extracurricular questions. So what kind of extracurricular activities were you involved in?
In high school?
Yeah. Or you can talk about just in general, what kind.
So in general, I know for a lot of people, so I went to Monte Vista like you did, and there were a lot of students from China or Taiwan, and the English wasn't their first language. I know for a lot of them, they often did extracurriculars that would like specifically target their English, like help them study, especially when I was in middle school. But for me, I never actually did any of those. Like my extracurriculars were mostly things I like. So this included sports. For middle school, I swam. For high school, I did track and field. I like doing like science experiments and stuff, or doing like science projects. So I did the Siemens research paper with you for sophomore year. Okay. That was pretty fun. Right. And then also during junior year, I did a competition called Explorer Vision, which is basically a competition in which we come up with ideas for the future. Wow. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a lot. So do you have more social engagement after attending those activities?
So yeah, for me in high school, when I came here, obviously I didn't have any friends. So, and the school system here is different from in Taiwan, where everyone is shoved in, like, the classes don't move. Like all the students are put in one class and they take all the same subjects together. Here they switch around. So for me, doing extracurricular activities helped me sort of make friends, because it was harder to make friends with these classes where for each subject students move around. Yeah.
Okay. So consider back to your time when you have experienced language barrier, whether it's moving back to Taiwan or staying here. Did you find the activities at that time helpful to improve your language ability?
Okay, so one thing to point out was I was just talking about my extracurricular activities here.
Yeah.
But when I moved back in Taiwan, which was in 3rd grade, I did a lot of extracurricular activities that were specifically targeting my language, like helping my language. So I took essay writing class. I also stayed after school. And so at least going back there, the extracurricular activities did help me. Staying after school, doing those essay writing class did improve my language ability. Just for reference, I remember going back and I got an F, or the equivalent of F in Mandarin the first year. That was 3rd grade. And then by 4th grade, I already got A, like the equivalent of an A grade. Oh. So those extracurricular activities did really help. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of improvement. So could you give us an example? Just staying after class, like the teacher will help you after class?
So staying after class, it's not like a program. So my 3rd grade teacher she really wanted me to do well. She did know my background, and so she offered to sort of like kind of tutor me after school. It was specifically for tutoring homework, but it could be it could be other stuff such as extra essay writing or whatever. Usually she would have another student stay. It's not they were usually my classmate, but they could be also from other classes. A lot of times in Taiwan, the parents, they sometimes don't have time to pick up the children, so their children stays at school for like an extended period after class. And so those students also like hung out with me. They were also, or the teacher asked them to sort of help them with my homework. So yeah, that's how usually that's what the after class thing was. Yeah.
How was that experience? Do you feel like you became friends with them, or do you feel like it's kind of awkward to have a student teacher?
It's definitely awkward, especially because I didn't speak the language. So for me, like, I was afraid of talking to them, basically. But they were generally nice. It was pretty cool for them to have a kid from the U.S. So I remember whenever we had English class, they would just try to get me to say something because there's no accent or whatever like they do. So that was pretty cool. Singing after class did help. If it did have to force me to sort of talk to them, and by doing that, it sort of opened me up. Having them as my teacher I didn't mind, and it actually did help because a lot of the times the teacher, she doesn't really understand like what I'm getting, what I'm not. I mean, even though they're just students, and they're like, even though they're like the students, they're still like not me because I was from the U.S.
They're third grade.
They're third grade, but I was from the U.S. and they weren't, so they didn't understand. Like they could understand the language barrier, but they might not necessarily understand like what my issue, like what my question was. But at least they sort of helped me out with like some of the things the teacher missed. Sometimes they could answer for me, basically. So it was like an additional. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's additional help. But does having English as a second language probably isn't your second language anymore?
English is. I was considering my main language.
Okay.
I was born in the U.S. first, and I moved back, and I came here. Then I moved to Taiwan, then I came back here. Okay. For a while, I guess Mandarin was my primary language, but right now it's definitely English. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, so consider back to the time that you come back here, because you haven't speak English in a long while, right? So, do you think that makes social interactions more difficult at that period?
So yeah, the social interactions were awkward at that period. It was about, I guess, a 1-year period. The worst thing was I moved back during 8th grade, so it was also in Taiwan would be the fall semester or the spring semester, but here it's in trimester, so it was their last trimester. So it was really hard for me to sort of mesh with them. And the issue wasn't really the language barrier. I could understand what they were saying. The issue was more that the culture here was different from the culture in Taiwan. The games we played were different, and also like the way they talk, like some slangs or whatever, I didn't understand them. So that's what made it weird or awkward. But after a year, because it was just these things, after a year, once I knew what they were, it was pretty easy to make friends.
Oh, so both countering the language barrier as well as the culture barrier is quite simple for you because you're just recapturing all this back. Okay. So, did you find your activities, the one that you said, extracurricular activities, helpful in any other aspect other than like improving language, helping your grades, making friends?
So obviously the ones I do here, or the ones I did here in the U.S., the ones I did in high school, I did them because they were interesting, especially the Shiba Explorer Vision one. I did get a National Honorable Mention, which is a pretty good award, or it's not an award, like it's a recognition basically. I felt pretty accomplished from that. It does sort of help me with my major, so mechanical engineering, so these things do help. For my extracurricular in Taiwan, just the tutoring specifically, it was just really just language and making friends. I don't know if any kid would like want to do that again. If I had really good language skills or like really good Mandarin skills, I wouldn't have done it. But yeah, they were really useful though.
Okay, so that's all the experience that we got.